It looks like we have an update on the latest about Mercedes Moné ahead of AEW Big Business this Wednesday night, when many people believe her to be making her AEW debut live at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Mercedes was recently on the Kick Rocks Wrestling podcast, where she discussed a whole bunch of things, including what's in store for her wrestling future, what led to her departure from WWE, and why she might end up going back. Yep. It's happening. I'm here to tell you and fill you in on everything we know about the situation so far. Before I do, though, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I'm Omer Q for Real Take Wrestling. Let's get right into it. So, okay, we all know AEW Big Business this coming Wednesday. I said it before, I'll say it again. Everyone and their mother at this point expects Mercedes to walk down that aisle and be all elite by the end of the night. And going into it, we were all wondering, like, what's the buildup going to be? Is there going to be marketing for this? Is AEW going to be pushing Mercedes a lot beforehand? And it seems like it's a bit of a similar situation with CM Punk, which many people expected, as far as the way AEW is marketing this. They are not announcing Mercedes outright beforehand, but they are dropping every single hint in the world for you to know that Mercedes will be there. And Mercedes has done virtually no media at all around this. However, she was, as I said before, on the Kick Rocks Wrestling podcast, where she discussed her future, and it really dropped a lot of hints about, big business on that podcast. She discussed that how she found her wrestling home. She thinks that she has found her wrestling home. And, without saying the explicit term, I'm all elite or I'm going to AEW, she dropped every hint in the world as well that she's going to be there at Big Business on Wednesday. Okay, many people expect that. That's fine. That's good. If we look at AEW Big Business right now, I think they're set up right now for just over 7,800 seats as far as, tickets go. They've sold over 7,000. I think they'll hit that 7,800, 8,000 mark, which if you compare that to where they were the last time they were in the TD Garden back at Blood and Guts, I believe it was somewhere around 8,900 according to WrestleTix. So, still a little bit off of what they were when they previously ran that arena, but also you have to factor in, they're not announcing Mercedes beforehand, and this is part of the issue with not doing that, right? If they had announced Mercedes beforehand and promised that Mercedes would be there, then you probably would have seen more tickets sold. However, it's harder to sell out things on a rumor. And the reason why it's different with the whole CM Punk thing is like Punk had 7 years of buildup leading to that moment. Mercedes is a massive star, one of the biggest stars in the world. However, AEW trying to do this with Mercedes in a similar way to CM Punk, and expecting, 14,000 people to sell at the TD Garden, that was never going to happen. Not with the way they've done it, not with the lack of marketing they've done around the Boston area on this. It just was not going to yield that result. I think it's still a good result. Like, people are going to scoff at like 7,000-8,000. That's a great house, especially for a challenger brand like AEW. But I do think, if they had announced Mercedes beforehand, I understand it would have taken away from the mystique or whatever, or the pop. It still would have been a massive pop. It still would have been over. It still would have been insane. And people would have lost their minds, because there would be so many people out there online. There would be so many people out there who still would not believe it until they saw it before their eyes. Like, there's a lot of people out there who truly do not believe these things before, they happen. And I don't, and I'm not against that kind of thinking, but it's like, when all logic tells you that Mercedes is going to be there, you should probably believe it. But anyway, that's that part of it. She's going to be at AEW. We'll see what she does. I will be there on the ground live in Boston for that, so I'm super, super excited about that. But that's not the only thing she discussed on this podcast. She also discussed why she left WWE, and this has been something that she has teased before. She said that, the real story isn't really out there, and she has said that, I think that there's more that people haven't heard. And, well, she shared a little bit more on this podcast. She said the following about her departure from WWE, and I quote, "That's a big question. That's a big, big question. I really believe in not only the universe, but I believe in myself and a higher power of light that comes over me. Something inside me told me that I needed to go to do this and stand up for myself. It was a very hard decision because wrestling in WWE had been my whole life. People don't know. It's been my whole life. It's the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my whole life, but it's the proudest. It's crazy because I would not be sitting here living the best version of my life and getting to be everything I've ever dreamt of and more. It makes me excited because that moment changed my whole life for the better. I'm so thankful for that moment. I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of Trinity, of just how strong we were. Everybody wanted to talk about it. Everyone wanted to act like they were in the room. Everybody acted like they were in the room or worked there or were backstage or knew what happened or knew what was said. All I know is that I handled it like a CEO, like the boss that I am, with my head held high. I can't say anything but amazing things about WWE. I'm so thankful to the career they gave me, the fans they gave me, the life they gave me, the dreams that they gave me. So many dreams. I got to chase and live them all. I get to do so much more. I have a lot of unfinished business in wrestling in a lot of places. So that's what she had to say about her departure. She obviously did not get into the nitty-gritty details, but I think it's at least, easy to say or take away from that she, in her mind, is better off mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and, financially probably at this point, better off outside of WWE and having made that decision to leave at that time. We will never know, I don't think, precisely what happened. I think that's going to be one of those pro wrestling legends that kind of just floats out there until someone explicitly says aside. But one thing that we do know is that this wasn't a one instant thing. This wasn't something where one thing happened and they walked out. This was obviously building up, and you can hear it kind of in what she said. There's with everything she said, like WWE, I did so much. They allowed me to live out every single dream that I've ever had. All of that doesn't sound like someone who made an irrational decision in that moment. All of that points to someone who did not want to leave, but had to leave because that was the only way for them to get to do what they wanted, to grow in their life, to grow in their career. And sometimes you have to leave a place in order to do that. You have to move forward. We can't be you can't be complacent. You can't be sitting still all the time. And obviously I'm not going to try to get too much into Mercedes' head. She is the orator of her own story, and she will, I'm sure, one day actually tell that story. And I think if anyone's going to tell it and tell it well, it's going to be her. But we do know that, that was obviously a difficult decision for her. Another thing that she did say that we have to talk about on this podcast, the Kick Rocks podcast, I hope you guys go check it out, by the way. It was actually a really interesting interview. But Mercedes discussed the fact that, she has unfinished business, and part of that unfinished business is in WWE. And she did not rule out a return to WWE one day. That is interesting for multiple reasons. Number one, she's not even made her AEW debut. So there are people who are really up in arms about it, saying, oh my God, how dare Mercedes say this? She's already betraying AEW. And then there's other people who are like, ha ha, yeah, Mercedes, come home, Mercedes. Ha ha ha. There's a lot of talking going on right now. And I think there needs to be a little bit more thinking about the context and what that meant and all that kind of stuff. But the way it came across to me was number one, Mercedes, at the end of the day, wrestlers are a lot of things. They are still wrestlers at the end of the day. They are working. And I think it was pretty clear from a lot of parts of this interview the Mercedes was working a little bit. And what do wrestlers want to do? If you're working, keep you interested, keep you talking about them. And what are we doing right now? I'm sitting here on a YouTube channel talking about Mercedes, talking about potentially going back to WWE. And it keeps her in the conversation. It keeps momentum up so that when she eventually returns and goes to AEW, people are still talking. People are interested. People are like tuning in. She's very smart. She's not the dumbass that parts of the ICW or IWC, whatever, want to make her out to be. She's obviously very intelligent. So I think that like there's a lot of people who just want to feign outrage for the sake of feigning outrage, or you know, they take that out of context. But I think, one, she's a worker, she's a wrestler, she's trying to gain interest, and two, I mean, there's part of that is true. Like, you don't want to keep your options closed. WWE in 3-4 years, in the entire wrestling landscape for that matter, is going to be very different from what it is now. And who knows what the future will hold for Mercedes at that point. Who knows how much WWE is going to be willing to offer her. She can't. And with a new regime, with Triple H, someone that, you know, I would imagine she trusts more than the original regime. I think there's a lot more there to offer her. And part of that is like honesty. So again, it's wrestling. It is what it is. She's going to AEW. That is happening, but we'll see what happens. I will be there live on the ground in Boston, Massachusetts. If you're also going to be there, let me know. Come over, say hi, hit me up on X. We'll grab a Pepsi, or not a Pepsi because we're boycotting that. We'll grab some water or something. I don't know. But hit me up. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. And until next time, be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.